Welcome to today's presentation of Safe Zone Training. My name is Tim Delacqua and I will be your presenter today. Today's presentation is sponsored by the Great Falls LGBTQ+ Center and by a grant from the Montana Pride Foundation. The Great Falls Center opened in March of 2015. We've been having Safe Zone training since we opened. We have reached out to the community to present these trainings, to include community counselors and therapists, pastors, ministers, chaplains, church parishioners, military personnel, nurses, nursing students, doctors, high schools, and colleges. We are now including these webinars as part of our trainings. Montana is a very large state with few large cities and great distances in between. For many folks, it is inconvenient, if not impossible, to travel to Great Falls to attend. So we are reaching out with these presentations for our state. We will provide several different types of trainings, include this one in the webinar format. Please contact the Great Falls Center to learn more about future presentations. I would first like to start this off with an actual personal story that may help with understanding the path of our training today. I remember back in high school I took a class on the Latin language. Not only did we learn words, conjugation, and such, but we learned about Roman history, social structure, their norms, and culture. This made our studying more understandable and complete, learning about people that spoke that language. You might be wondering what this has to do with our topic today. Well, we're going to look into some of the history and culture of the LGBTQ+ community over the years. This is important and necessary for all of us to understand our community. The history, the culture of our community has been largely hidden and submerged, and our people have been marginalized, disenfranchised, and oppressed as if we did not ever exist. I have been a therapist in private practice since 1980. I worked with the Gay and Lesbian Center in Santa Monica, California. I worked with men who had AIDS and were dying. Throughout my career, I have worked with the LGBTQ+ community and continue to today. I'm one of the founders of the center. I instituted this program, modified it, and continue to develop more trainings for this community. In the early 1990s, in a Midwest college, a dedicated group of LGBTQ+ students with no resources dared to do what administrators should have: educate the campus, provide support services, and they started the first ever Safe Zone program. The goals of Safe Zone trainings are awareness and knowledge of gender, sexuality, including your own. We want to answer any questions you may have. We want to treat these questions from you as anonymous. Please write down on a piece of paper and hand in your question. You can also write and use your computer message box to write your questions. Again, we will see your name, but we will keep your questions anonymous. They did S for safety, A for administration, F for faculty, and E for equality. It was a special time for student activism at the Ball State College campus, long before public role models such as Ellen DeGeneres, and before movements for marriage equality, before trans inclusion was a glimmer on the horizon, before organizing on the internet. The gay admission gods recruited a certain band of future leaders that created a proving ground of sorts for new educational interventions on campus. These Safe Zone trainings are opportunities to learn about gender and sexuality, LGBTQ identities and issues. Safe Zone is a term used ubiquitously by schools and workplaces to indicate both a learning opportunity of Safe Zone workshops and the people who have completed them, Safe Zone trained individuals. And even more broadly, the term Safe Zone is used to refer to LGBTQ+ awareness workshops. For us, the goal of Safe Zone training isn't to change a particular space, but to create people and train people who are invested in creating safe and affirming environments wherever they go, and providing those people the skills and knowledge they need to do that. Are Safe Zone workshops just for straight people? Are they ally trainings? They are not just for straight people. While Safe Zone workshops will absolutely assist straight and cisgender people to learn how to be better allies, there is a lot for everyone to learn in a Safe Zone training. Many LGBTQ plus folks enjoy having opportunities to learn more about how to be better allies to those within the community, and more knowledgeable about identities and systems that they may not be aware of. Goals of our training. Number 1, we want to increase your awareness of the LGBTQ plus community and its pioneers. We want you to know the differences between sexual orientation and gender identity, which is described with the term SOGI. And 3, we want you to understand the common life experiences of members from our community. And also number 4, we would very much like you to understand the terminology that we use. The German word up there, which I will not be able to properly pronounce, is Arbeit macht frei, which means work sets you free. This is the entrance to Auschwitz, a German concentration camp during World War II. And we're going to get into the Safe Zone symbols and Rosa Winkel. Rosa Winkel was not a woman's name, but it stands for a pink triangle. The real story behind Rosa Winkel begins prior to World War II. On June 28, 1935, Article 175, a clause in German law, prohibited any type of contact between two men. Homosexual relations, much like many states in the U.S. today, have laws against crimes of nature. Later that year, during Hitler's rise to power, he extended this law to include homosexual kissing, embracing, and even having homosexual fantasies. An estimated 50,000 people were convicted under this law between 1937 and 1939 alone. 5,000 to 15,000 of these sentenced were incarcerated in Nazi concentration camps. Their sentence also included sterilization, most commonly in the form of castration. In 1942, Hitler extended the punishment for homosexuality to death. The LGBTQ movement has since adopted the pink triangle, which is Rosa Winkel in German, both in memory of past expression. The LGBTQ movement has since adopted the pink triangle both in memory of past oppression and as a symbol of hope for the future. Homosexuals in the camps were treated to an unusual degree of cruelty by their captors. Rosa Winkel, the pink triangle, was worn by prisoners in Nazi Germany concentration camps to designate them as gay. The green circle that you see around it represents a safe space surrounding the traditional triangle design. Thus, it is commonly used to represent safe zones, committed to providing safe, non-judgmental, and supportive contacts for all. It denotes that it is okay to talk about LGBTQ issues wherever the symbol is displayed. For lesbians in the prison camps, they did not wear a pink triangle, they wore a black one, and they were separated from other women. Also in the camp, if someone had a symbol of a pink triangle and a yellow triangle, it meant that they were a Jewish homosexual. And so it was called Nazism's pink hell. Homosexual prisoners were forced to sleep in nightshirts and to hold their hands outside the covers. This was supposed to prevent masturbation. One prisoner recalled that anyone caught without underwear or with their hands underneath the covers, that they were, and there were several checks each night, was taken outside, had several buckets of water dumped on them, and were made to stand that way for a good hour. Only a few survived, especially when there was a centimeter of ice on the window panes. Bronchitis was prevalent as a result, and it was rare for a homosexual to come back alive from the hospital. There was a particular camp regarded until 1942 as the Auschwitz for homosexuals, had held large numbers of homosexuals. In 1943, Himmler issued a new decree allowing homosexuals who submitted to castration and demonstrated good behavior to be released from the camps. Some of them took advantage of this ruling, although walking out the gates of the camps did not mean they were no longer under the care of the Nazis. They were assigned to penal army divisions and sent into combat, which equaled a death sentence. Homosexuals were subjected also to medical experiments. During the concentration camps, during the existence of the concentration camps during the war, it was decided by Germany that there would be a, quote, final solution. This meant that all prisoners would be put to death, cremated, and that's actually what did happen. No more were they allowed to be just prisoners, but they were put to death. Homosexuals continued to be prosecuted. After the camps were liberated by the Allies and the plight of the Jewish victims acknowledged worldwide, the persecution of homosexuals continued through post-war Germany. While many survivors were rebuilding their lives and families, initially in displaced person camps, homosexuals faced further persecution and social exclusion. In fact, many Pink Triangle survivors were re-imprisoned as homosexuals remained deviants in the eyes of the post-war society. Here you will see a remembrance, a gay memorial to those homosexual men who suffered in the Nazi prison camps. Here you see the Great Falls Pride flag. What is gay pride? It's a lot of different things to a lot of different people. The modern LGBTQ pride movement hasn't benefited just gays and lesbians and people within our alphabet soup. The work to build a society that is accepting of its citizens makes for a stronger nation. It teaches us to live with and celebrate contradiction. It moves away from a viewpoint of either or and closer to the inclusion and. What could be more all-American? Our movement has three main premises: that people should be proud of their sexual orientation and gender identity, that diversity is a gift. Sexual orientation, gender identity are inherent and cannot be intentionally altered. The mission of the Great Falls Center is to enhance and sustain the health and well-being of our community. Our purpose is to stay active with our mission today and tomorrow. The center was built with the inspiration of having it be like a family for all people who come in, a very accepting family. So therefore, in this house, we do second chances, we do grace, we do mistakes, we do real. We even do I'm sorries and do loud really well. We do hugs, we do love, we do family. Many of the people within our community have been ostracized from their families and relatives and are very much alone in the world. So we try very hard to provide them with the things that they need to live a fruitful life. The GLMA is a gay and lesbian medical association to which our center aspires. We have many therapists who are affiliated with the center, and all of them have gone through trainings and have also assigned the ethics of the GLMA. The most important part of the ethics, I believe, is that we believe that lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender identities are within the spectrum of normal human experience and are not in themselves pathological, unnatural, or sinful. We therefore do not promote or support attempts to change patients' sexual orientation or gender identity. This is also the ethics of the American Medical Association, in that, if you read here, the office appreciates diversity of human beings and does not discriminate based on race, age, religion, ability, marital status, sexual orientation, sex, or gender identity. Like I said earlier, all therapists who work with the center abide by these ethics as they receive their training. Now we're going to do a small but important exercise. It's called a coming out exercise. So please write down on a piece of paper, 1. A person, the name of a person who is a friend or loved one of yours, someone you have been close to. 2, write down a family member or relative. Write down their name. 3, your hobby or passion. 4, a favorite material possession. And 5, a dream job. Your dream job. Maybe the one you already have or the one you're studying for or practicing on. Now what I would like you to do is sit back, relax, and close your eyes. We're going to walk through a certain scenario, and I would like you to feel comfortable. First, imagine you're a little boy and you're hanging out with that number one person on your list, that friend, that loved one. You're watching cartoons and you say that you love Batman. Your number one person asks you what you mean by that. You try to explain that you are really in love with Batman. He's very cool. He's very sexy. Then your friend calls you a fag and tells you that he can't hang out with you anymore. So mark that person off your list. Fast forward to high school. Your feelings of attraction to people of the same sex hasn't gone away, and you've started to explore them secretly in relationships. You think, it's the 21st century. My family loves me. I should be myself. You decide to tell your parents that you are dating someone and that you are gay. They tell you that you're going through a phase and force you to break up with that person or find a new home to live in. You say it's not a phase, it's who you are, and they kick you out. So mark that number two person off your list. A little further down the road, you're in college now and life has gotten a little better. You've found a community of people to hang out with who support and care for you. They accept you for who you are. One day you see a sign for a student organization meeting that number three thing on your list. That passion, that hobby. You decide to check it out and go to the meeting. Afterward, the president comes up to you and introduces himself. You both start talking and he asks if he saw you in the gay pride parade on campus recently. You excitedly say yes and describe the event that you were involved with. He tells you that he respects your right to do what you want, but that members of the group wouldn't feel comfortable around you. He asks you not to come back. Mark number three off your list. After you leave the meeting, you come back to your room to find that "die faggot" is written on the door, and your room has been broken into. That number four thing has been destroyed. Mark that off your list. That was your favorite possession. Finally, later in life, you've managed to get your ideal job and life is good. You're at work one day and have a picture of your partner and your child on your desk. Your boss walks by and asks about them. You tell them who they are, and she says great and goes on her way. The next morning you get called to a meeting where your boss tells you that the company is downsizing and they have to let you go. Mark this off your list. Please open up your eyes and let's talk about this. It's important to realize that this is just possible one person's experience. It's not meant to tell every LGBTQ person's story or to say that all people lose all the things they love. And it's definitely not for you to be able to say you know how this feels now. This is a particularly tragic coming out story, but it's also not overly dramatic. These things do happen. And I want you to try to experience empathy as a means of broadening your perspective. Coming out, remember, is not a one-time thing. It's a lifelong process, a decision people have to make again and again and again in new situations, in new jobs, in new organizations, with new friends. There is a lot of risk in coming out, which is why many people choose not to. So don't be mad at a friend or a family member when they come out because why didn't you tell me before? It's hard to predict how people will respond to someone coming out. It's extremely important for us to understand that this is one hypothetical individual's experience with coming out. It's not meant to represent every person's story or to say that coming out is this bad for everyone, but to highlight many of the negative social and legal ramifications of coming out and to make clear that coming out is not a one-time thing. Why would someone want to come out? From the last exercise you saw where someone lost pretty much all those really important things in their life. Well, some people would say, we want to share our personal lives. We want people to know who we are. The alternative to stay in the closet, as they say, is often to evade and having to make up stories for people who would not, or you feel would not understand if you were open. It can feel like living a lie. To come out means you could seek support, either from like a center or for people you work with or other people that you know come from this community. And number 5, and probably the most important, is to aid in the search for a partner, one thing that we all have in common. And it's hard to do that if you stay in the closet. Other reasons include the ability to live honestly. Self-esteem building is something that people talk about. Developing closer, more genuine relationships with friends and family. Alleviating the stress of hiding one's identity. Connecting with other people who are from the community. Being a member of a community with whom you have things in common, helping to dispel myths and stereotypes by speaking up about your own experiences, and being a role model for others. Coming out does not necessarily mean coming out to everyone. Some people might choose to be selective about who they come out to. Plus, coming out is usually a gradual process. In a way, it can be a lifelong process, since every person you meet is one person to come out to. Sometimes friends and family that have a difficult time in the beginning will be able to process this as time goes on. Remember, not everyone will be understanding or accepting. Family, friends, or coworkers may be shocked, confused, or hostile. Rejection from religious communities is a possibility. Permanent changes in some relationships may occur. Harassment or discrimination. Disownment by family, parents, and loss of financial support. So, what happens when someone you care about comes out to you? Supportive things to say. Asking how long they've known that they were gay or lesbian. Asking if they're seeing someone special. Asking if there's any way that you can help. Letting them know that you are not going to quote-unquote out them, that you are not going to tell other people about this unless they want you to. Has it been hard for you to keep this secret? How difficult has it been coming out? Have I ever offended you unknowingly? Is an important one, because you want to make sure that that type of behavior does not occur, and you would like to make sure that the ways that the two of you communicate can stay genuine. Here is the match game menu. We're going to go through several areas of history and culture. So let's start off with naming a gay holiday. There's many gay holidays throughout the year. As you can see, some of the major ones are April 17th, which is a day of silence. It's sponsored by GLSEN, and GLSEN is the leading national education organization focused on ensuring safe schools for all students. Established in 1990, GLSEN envisions a world in which every child learns to respect and accept all people, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity or expression. The GLSEN Day of Silence is a student-led national event that brings attention to anti-LGBTQ name-calling, bullying, and harassment in schools. Students from middle school to college take a vow of silence in an effort to encourage schools and classmates to address the problems of anti-LGBTQ behavior by illustrating the silence effect of bullying and harassment on LGBTQ students and those perceived to be LGBTQ. The next raft, I should say, or group of holidays is in June. The whole month is referred to as LGBTQ Pride Month. June 27th, the Stonewall riots were a series of spontaneous, violent demonstrations by members of the gay community against a police raid that took place in the early morning hours of June 28th, 1969, at the Stonewall Inn in the Greenwich Village neighborhood of New York City. They are widely considered to constitute the single most important event leading to gay liberation movement and the modern fight for gay and lesbian rights in the United States. Our next holiday is National Coming Out Day, or NCOD. It is an international observed civil awareness day celebrating individuals who publicly identify as a gender or sexual minority. The day is observed annually by members of the LGBT community and allies on October 11th. NCOD was founded in 1988 by Robert Eckberg, a psychologist from New Mexico and founder of the Personal Growth Workshop. The Experience and Gene O'Leary, an openly gay political leader from Los Angeles, and then the head of the National Gay Rights Advocates. The date of October 11th was chosen because of the anniversary of the 1987 National March on Washington for lesbian and gay rights. It is a common day for many people to come out, and it's used as a day of solidarity to help those come out together in a way of feeling comforted. Many celebrities, rock stars come out on that day, and many other people follow. The next major holiday is November 27th. It's the Harvey Milk Day. Harvey was an American politician and the first openly gay elected official in the history of California, where he was elected to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. Harvey Milk was assassinated on November 27, 1978, along with San Francisco Mayor George Moscone. Supervisor Dan White was the assassin. Dan White's trial was marked by what came to be known as the Twinkie defense, as his lawyer claimed that the normally stable White had grown slovenly prior to the shootings due to abandoning his usually healthy diet and instead indulging in sugary junk food such as Coke, donuts, and Twinkies. In a surprising move, a jury convicted White of voluntary manslaughter rather than murder, and White would subsequently serve just 6 years in prison. As a result of White's downgraded conviction, peaceful demonstration by Castro's gay community outside City Hall turned violent. More than 5,000 policemen responded by entering nightclubs, armed with clubs, and assaulting patrons. By the riot's end, 124 people were injured, including 59 policemen. This episode is known in history as the White Night Riots. Our next exploration will be the terms bigotry, homophobia, and heterosexism. Bigotry is defined as an utter intolerance of a person, group, or class on the basis of race, ethnicity, color, all of these different things, including gender identity and expression. Coretta Scott King said homophobia is like racism and anti-Semitism and other forms of bigotry, and that it seeks to dehumanize a large group of people, to deny their humanity, their dignity, and personhood. Heterosexism is the false assumption that everyone is or should be heterosexual because it is assumed to be the only acceptable and viable life option. This assumption often leads to discrimination based on sexual orientation, a form of homophobia. Another important word is stereotype, a widely held but fixed and oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person or thing. In other words, when we talk about gay men, not all gay men seem to be feminine. Many football players who do not seem to be feminine are gay, and not all lesbians are butch. And so these types of stereotypes persist and tend to denigrate people. Next is LGBTQ plus folks from Montana and beyond. These are famous LGBTQ folks from Montana. First we have Kimberly Reed. She is a transgender woman. Originally her name was Paul McCarroll, and it must be said she is no longer Paul McCarroll. She is these days Kimberly Reed. She's a filmmaker, a New Yorker, and transgender person from Helen, Montana. In 2010, she produced and directed a film, Prodigal Sons. She decided to make a documentary about her return home to Montana for her high school reunion. Presently, she has a movie called Dark Money, which she produced and directed herself, and it is hitting reviews across the nation. We're waiting for it to come to Montana so that we can review it. The next person that we have is Robert Zanker. Robert Zanker was a married man and father of two, boxed in the psychologically complicated emotional taut web of secrecy. Shame, fear, guilt, doubt, and ambiguity of self, of a transsexual deeply in denial. Presently, Roberta still resides and works in Helena. The next two people are always quite famous, especially in Great Falls, as they used to be residents. They just recently moved to Kalispell. These two women were couples in the ACLU's lawsuit challenging Montana's marriage amendment. They are Angie and Tanya Rolando of Great Falls. Angie and Tanya Rolando were seeking to get married in Montana, and their other three couples are seeking to have from other states recognized by Montana. So Angie and Tanya were the only couple that actually were married, and the first married in Montana. Very brave women. We're sorry that they moved and lived in Kalispell now. Okay, here we have famous trans folks. Our first one is Chaz Bono. Chaz was born Chastity Bono on March 4th, 1969. His parents were entertainers Sonny Bono and Cher. Chaz is a human rights activist, writer, musician, and actor. Bono is a transgender man. In 1995, several years after being outed as lesbian by the tabloid press, he publicly self-identified as such in a cover story in The Advocate, a national gay and lesbian magazine. Eventually, he went on to discuss the process of coming out to oneself and to others in two books that he wrote. The first one, Family Outing, A Guide to the Coming Out Process for Gays, Lesbians, and Their Families, in 1998, includes his coming out account. His second book, the memoir The End of Innocence, in 2003, discusses his outing, music career, and his partner Joan Steffens' death in 1994 from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Between 2008 and 2010, Bono underwent female-to-male gender transition. A two-part Entertainment Tonight feature in June 2009 explained that his transition had started a year before. In May 2010, he legally changed his gender and name. A documentary on Bono's experience called Becoming Chaz was screened at the 2011 Sundance Film Festival and later made into a television debut story on the Oprah Winfrey Network. Our next person is Jennifer Finney Boylan. She's an American author, a professor of English at Barnard College, and a political activist. In 2014, she joined the faculty of Barnard College. She is a trans woman. Her 2003 autobiography, She Is Not There, A Life of Two Genders, was the first book by an openly transgender American to become a bestseller. A consultant for the TV show Transparent, Professor Jennifer Finney Boylan is the author of 15 books. She is also the inaugural Anna Quindlen Writer in Residence at Barnard College of Columbia University. Her column Men and Women appears on the op-ed page of the New York Times on alternate Wednesdays. From 2011 to 2018, she served on the board of directors of GLAAD, the media advocacy group for LGBTQ people worldwide. She was a co-chair of GLAAD's board of directors from 2013 to 2017. She was a consultant and cast member for I Am Kate, the docuseries about Caitlyn Jenner that was on the E! Channel in July of 2015. She also served as a member of the Board of Trustees of the Kinsey Institute of Research on Sex, Gender, and Reproduction. Her most recent book is the novel Long Black Veil, published by Penguin Random House in April 2017. Two other current projects are Falcon Quinn and the Bullies of Greenblood, an anti-bullying YA project, and the anthology of women writing about home, This Is the Place. A novelist, a memoirist, and a short story writer, she is also a known advocate for civil rights. Jenny has appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show on 4 occasions, Live with Larry King twice, The Today Show and the Barbara Walters Special, NPR's Marketplace, and Talk of the Nation. She has also been a subject of documentaries on CBS, 48 Hours, and the History Channel. She lives in New York City and in Belgrade Lakes, Maine, with her wife Dee Dee and her sons Zach and Sean. Next, we have Sonia Rescalvo Zafra, a trans woman from Barcelona, Spain. Sonia was born in Cuenca in 1945, and in 1961, at the age of 16, she moved to Barcelona. In the Comtal city, she became part of an artistic world of parallel, and specifically at the Arnaud Theatre. She worked for many years as a vedette, a person who would sing, dance, and act on stage, and she became very popular. At this time in Barcelona, transsexuality was marginalized and repressed, ignored as a political object. As a result, transgender people were practically outlaws, and especially transgender women were close to the world of prostitution, often the only chance to find work and survive. Sonia, who in 1991 was 45 years old, had fallen into prostitution and destitution, and which forced her to sleep in the open. On the night of the 6th of October in 1991, Sonia was killed in a brutal beating by a group of neo-Nazis in Claudela Park in Barcelona. Her murder was very relevant because it was the first crime of a transsexual for the mere fact of being one. That night, in an evening of partying, 6 skinheads of ultra-right ideology sneaked into the Parc de la Cudella of Barcelona through a hole in the gate, heading to the Musicians' Roundabout, a usual meeting place of homosexuals and transsexuals. As they prepared to play the drum, a form in which they called kicking with their boots reinforced with iron points on the heads of their victims, Sonia and her co-worker, Doris Romero, slept that night in the open in the park and were identified by the group as lumps with transvestite appearance. The beating that Sonia and Dora received was so violent that one of the attackers broke a toe, despite the fact that his boot was protected with a steel reinforcement. The first journalistic reports confused Sonia with a black person because she was totally covered in black bruises. Dora managed to survive by mere chance, but Sonia died from a rain of kicks in the head and a jab in the chest with a broomstick. After leaving both dying on the ground, they beat up a one-eyed homeless man who was nearby. As a result, he lost the only good eye he had, thus completely going blind. These facts were denounced by the Gay Liberation Front of Catalonia and the Lesbian Gay Coordinator. In 1994, the trial was made in the Provincial Court of Barcelona, resulting in the conviction of all 6 neo-Nazis for murder. In 2013, at the proposal of the LGBTQ platform, the name of transsexual Sonia was given to the public square where she was assassinated, and a statue was erected in her honor. Some of you may know this person. This is Laverne Cox. She's an American actress and LGBTQ advocate. She rose in prominence with her role as Sophia Burset on the Netflix series Orange is the New Black, becoming the first openly transgender person to be nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award in the acting category, and the first to be nominated for an Emmy Award since composer-musician Angela Morley in 1990. In 2015, she won a Daytime Emmy Award in Outstanding Special Class Special as executive producer for Laverne Cox Presents, The T Word. This made her the first openly transgender woman to win a Daytime Emmy as an executive producer. Also in 2015, she became the first openly transgender person to have a wax figure of herself at Madame Tussauds. In 2017, she became the first transgender person to play a transgender series regular on broadcast TV as Cameron Worth on CBS's Doubt. Cox appeared as a contestant on the first season of VH1's reality show I Want to Work for Diddy, and co-produced and co-hosted the VH1 makeover television series Transform Me. In April 2014, Cox was honored by GLAAD with its Stephen F. Kolzak Award for her work as an advocate for the transgender community. In 2014, Cox became the first openly transgender person to appear on the cover of Time magazine. In February 2018, Cox became the first openly transgender person to appear on the cover of any Cosmopolitan magazine, specifically Cosmopolitan South Africa. Our next transgender person is Jen Richards. She is a transgender activist, writer, actress, and producer. She was born in Mississippi and resides in North Carolina. In 2013, Richards founded the website We Happy Trans. In 2015, she appeared as a supporting cast member of Caitlyn Jenner's reality show, I Am Kate. In 2016, she co-starred, co-directed, and co-produced the web series Her Story, which was nominated for an Emmy Award. Richards also co-produced the series More Than Tea and wrote the Trans 102 series. She joined the cast of the television series Nashville in 2017. She became the first openly transgender person to appear on a CMT show, playing the first transgender character to appear on that network. She also appeared in the 2017 film Easy Living. In 2017, Richard wrote and appeared in a video open letter presented by Screen Crush and GLAAD, featuring trans actors asking for better representation in film and television. Lourdes Ashley Hunter is the co-founder and national director of the Trans Women of Color Collective, a grassroots global initiative led by trans and gender nonconforming people of color that works to uplift the lived narratives, experiences, and leadership of trans and gender nonconforming people of color, their families, their comrades, while building towards collective liberation for all oppressed people through healing and restorative justice. Originally from Detroit, Michigan, Lourdes is a catalyst for change who has led grassroots initiatives that impact the socioeconomic growth and development of communities disproportionately impacted by state-sanctioned violence for over 20 years. Lourdes identifies as trans, non-binary, and does not use pronouns. Lourdes has led the successful development and implementation of culturally competent best practices at government agencies such as the New York City Department of Homeless Services, the New York City Human Resources Administration, and the New York Police Department. Lourdes has worked with the White House Anti-Violence Task Force, the Office of National AIDS Policy, the Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Prisons. She has set the tone for courageous conversations that center around the needs of the communities that Lourdes serves. Her leadership has led collaborative efforts with the United Nations. At a civil society side event during the UN Human Rights Council meeting in Geneva, Lourdes described the discrimination, violence, and other major human rights violations that transgender women of color face in the U.S.
Caitlyn Jenner, the woman formerly known as Bruce Jenner, made her debut in a big way.
We're achieving greater and greater visibility in society.
Transgender visibility might be moving from the margins into the mainstream. But what does it mean?
As long as trans women of color are suffering and dying in the streets, I'm going to hold off a little bit on the celebrations.
The 8th trans woman murdered in the U.S. this year.
Every breath a trans person takes is an act of revolution.
And while transgender people helped kick off the fight for gay equality, progress in their fight for civil rights has been decades in the making.
What's shocking is not Bruce Jenner coming out. What's shocking is the way people treat us.
That female side is part of me.
When Bruce Jenner, now Caitlyn Jenner, told a story about being born with a body that didn't match her internal sense of who she is, many people gained a better understanding of what it means to be a transgender person.
Finally, people have woken up and realized that they know someone who's transgender.
with an award-winning TV show about a family patriarch changing gender,
This is me.
and transgender actress Laverne Cox gracing the cover of Time magazine, you might think society has reached a new level of understanding. Activist Lords Ashley Hunter says you would be mistaken.
The community that I work for is wondering how they're going to eat tonight, wondering if they're going to have health coverage, wondering if they're even going to make it back to the shelter where they're staying. I don't want people to watch Transparent and say this is the lives of trans people, because it is not.
In 2002, Hunter came to New York City at age 26 on a one-way bus ticket from Detroit with $20 in her pocket. She planned on doing community service work in exchange for a place to stay, but when she went to a women's shelter, she was turned away for being transgender. Then, she says, things only got worse.
So I found myself homeless and ended up having to be assigned to a men's shelter called Ward's Island. Ward's Island housed about 1,000 men. And every night, there was a fear for me. I couldn't sleep. I can remember a time where I went to take a shower, and a man came into a shower and raped me. And he had a razor blade. And there was nothing that I can do. When I went to the shelter staff to tell them what had happened to me, they blamed me. They told me that I didn't have to be there, that it was my choice to live this lifestyle that I was living. And so, for me, having to have those experiences, it's just a snapshot of what we have to go through just to live. Most trans people would rather sleep under an overpass or in the park than have to deal with that type of violence.
Hunter runs the Trans Women of Color Collective to provide leadership and raise awareness, not only about current events, but historical ones as well.
We come from a rich legacy of revolutionary freedom fighters. Historically, those stories have been erased from the history books.
Presently, on the screen here, you will see the famous transgender pioneers. Dora actually was originally named Rudolf Richter. She was born in Germany. Dora attempted to tourniquet her penis at age 6. She expressed a strong dislike of male clothing and was permitted to live as female. She worked as a waiter or a cook in the fancy hotels in Berlin in the summer and lived as a woman in the off-season. The police arrested her several times for cross-dressing, and she was sent to a male prison. Eventually, a judge took pity on her and referred her to a Magnus Hirschfeld, who helped her obtain an official permit to dress in women's clothing. She was medically castrated in 1922 in Berlin. She was offered a vaginoplasty in 1931, and so was one of the first persons to have a sex change operation. Afterwards, she worked as a maid at the Institute of Sexology until it was destroyed by the Nazis in 1933. She is not to have known to survive the attack. Next is Lily Illis Elvens, better known as Lily Elby, was a Danish transgender woman and one of the first identifiable recipients of sex reassignment surgery. She was born Einar Magnus Andreas Wegener and was a successful painter under that name. She also presented as Lily, sometimes spelled L-I-L-Y, and was publicly introduced as Esner's sister. After successfully transitioning in 1930, she made a legal name change to Lily Ilse Elvenses and stopped painting altogether. In June 1931, Elby had her fourth operation, which consisted of implanting a uterus and the construction of a vagina, both of which were new and experimental surgeries. Her immune system rejected the uterus, however, and she developed an infection and in fact died. The third from the left person is Christine Jorgensen. She was an American trans woman who was the first person to become widely known in the United States for having sex reassignment surgery. Jorgensen grew up in Bronx, New York City. Shortly after graduating from high school in 1945, she was drafted into the Army for World War II. After her service, she attended several schools, worked, and around this time heard about sex reassignment surgery. She traveled to Europe and in Copenhagen, Denmark, obtained special permission to undergo a series of operations starting in 1951. She returned to the United States in the early 1950s, and her transition was a subject of a New York Daily News front page story. She became an instant celebrity, using the platform to advocate for transgender people, and became known for her directness and polished wit. She also worked as an actress and nightclub entertainer and recorded several songs. And we are going to see a short video of her.
I'm very happy to be back, and I don't have any plans at the moment. And I thank you all for coming, but I think it's too much. Fine, thank you very much.
Christine was on TV, interviewed many times in the 50s. There has been several books and actually a movie of her biography that was shown. Those kinds of things, the movie can still be found on YouTube. The next person that we want to look at is Renee Richards. She is an American ophthalmologist and former tennis player who had some success on the professional circuit in the 70s. In 1975, Richard underwent male-to-female sex reassignment surgery. She was then denied entry into the 1976 U.S. Open by the United States Tennis Association, which began that year requiring genetic screening for female players. She disputed this policy, and the New York Supreme Court ruled in her favor in 1977 in a decision in favor of transsexual rights. As one of the first professional athletes to identify as such, she became a spokesperson for the transgender community. After retiring, she coached Martina Navratilova to 2 Wimbledon titles.
Renee Richards has become the source of international and national controversy over the past week or two. A cause celeb. The reason? Is she male or is she female?
She is a transsexual. 2 years ago, she was Dr. Richard Raskin and was ranked nationally among the top 20 male tennis players over age 35.
It's just overpowering all the other stories. How many transsexuals were in the world at the time? And it just so happens one of them is a professional tennis player. It's like, what are the odds, you know?
I said to her, what do you call yourself? Transgender, transsexual?
I'm a woman like everyone else. Ask me how the match went instead.
Like, how in the world did this happen? This might incentivize more guys to turn into girls or something.
Should she be allowed to play against women opponents?
It was big news. You know, it was sensational. She beat somebody who said afterwards it wasn't fair, I was playing a guy, you know. Her next opponent walked off the court, wouldn't even finish the match.
Some of the lesser players were getting all up in arms, and they almost on a strike mode.
I think that what they are afraid of is the unknown.
Her size, 6'1", and her skill have threatened other female players.
You know, what if she comes on and becomes #1? Are we all going to be able to handle that?